and catch and release. How about that? That's my favorite. Catch. You catch a damn killer. You catch a bad hombre.
Oh, Sanjay, how I wish that runaway jerky wagon killed me instead of you. Oh, I miss you too, brother.
Step, shorty. Step.
We ain't mad enough for you. Boy, go.
Re-up, yo.
Hello,
Tiger Lily, make Big Chief heap glad. Well, he certainly doesn't look heap glad.
Make Peter Pan heap Big Chief. You now, little flying eagle.
Sí, tía, sí, usted tiene 73 años, no 20. Claro que no, pero yo estoy en Estados Unidos, así que mátese, que no me importa. Ok, sí, te quiero, mamá.
In a time when, quote, political incorrectness is a backdoor for racist sentiments to become normalized as logical in the public front stage of political discourse, it has become increasingly important to acknowledge the role that media, news, entertainment, social, or otherwise, specifically plays in maintaining racial hegemony. As a result, I chose to do a literature review focused on multimodal, critical media literacy-based approaches to addressing racism for my final project. Throughout the process, my research questions were: how can the development of critical media literacy skills provide a framework for educating students about racial hegemony? In what ways has media been used within critical pedagogies? And how can media making be used as a pedagogical tool to facilitate the development of critical media literacy skills across various age groups? To ground my literature review, I looked to Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed to outline critical pedagogy as a whole. Freire discussed criticality as the mutual humanization of student and teacher and the capability of the teacher to exchange the role of depositor, prescriber, and domesticator for the role of student among students to undermine the power of oppression and serve the cause of liberation. Foley, et al., 2009, continued this conceptualization of criticality where teachers aren't, quote, depositors of knowledge into students, but instead transformative intellectuals who work in partnership with their students to co-construct knowledge. One such application of critical pedagogy has been the critical evaluation of more modern forms of media, or critical media literacy. Quoting Kellner and Scher, 2005, critical media literacy, quote, deepens the potential of education to critically analyze relationships between media and audiences, information, and power. One such example of developing critical media literacy in students was the Elementary Bubble Project, studied by Gaynor et al., 2009. The Bubble Project is an anti-capitalist response to advertisements, where activists placed speech bubbles on public ads so that the general public could fill in dialogue. In the classroom, fourth grade students were asked to talk back to advertisements and magazines targeted toward youth using these same speech bubbles. This activity sparked conversations for students in which they began organically questioning the motives of ad creators as opposed to blindly buying into the lifestyles offered in the ads. The success of the activity demonstrates how critically analyzing media can be used to question fundamental aspects of society, such as consumerism. Given the ongoing resistance to critical pedagogies and conversations about race in educational settings as a whole, critical race media pedagogies have most often found a home in higher education where there are fewer barriers in place. One critical race media literacy intervention was performed by Yasso, 2002, where she analyzed the ability of a critical race media literacy curriculum to challenge deficit discourses about Chicanas/Os perpetuated by entertainment media. After pre- and post-surveys, 2 curriculum sessions where Latinx students analyzed representation in film and television, and individual interviews, Yasso found the development of a naive critical consciousness in participants. Another one of the key findings of this study was the, quote, prove them wrong mentality demonstrated by many of the students, wherein students believed that individual actions were the solution to systemic problems. This equally important finding indicates the need for this type of intervention earlier in a student's educational journey. In my discussion section, I discussed what I see as an ideal framework for implementing critical race media literacy pedagogies, one that is multimodal. A multimodal approach has multiple benefits. For one, it values student voices as producers of media and experts on their own experiences. It also reinforces the idea of personal reflection as pedagogy, aligning with critical race theory as well. Lastly, it helps students to understand how producers encode messages through production themselves, which helps them to decode these messages when they are on the end of the consumer. Jacobs, 2016, conducted a study with high school black girls from 2 majority-white elite schools in a suburb. Using media like this spoken word poem, Average Black Girl, by Ernestine Johnson, the group analyzed the ways in which black girls, quote, employ an oppositional gaze to create forms of media to resist the dominant negative messages that are communicated through websites, television shows, movies, music, magazines, books, blogs, and other types of media.
Well, when did me talking right equate to me talking white? They say I'm not the average black girl. No, not the average black girl, because the pigment of my skin is just a shade lighter than that black girl over there. You know the black girl over there, the black girl with the nappy hair, the black girls whose elbows can't skip a day without lotion, whose hearts and heads are filled up with self-hate and bottled up emotion.
Over the course of 16 weeks, the group discussed beauty standards related to hair and body type and societal expectations of black girls, among other topics. In later meetings, the girls began to produce media which resisted mainstream narratives about black girls and created counter-narratives which affirmed their identities. Through media making and critical analysis rooted in black feminism, this experience encouraged positive identity development for students through the identification and resistance of negative media messages about black girls. So, looking forward, multimodal applications of critical race media literacy pedagogies in K-12 settings are effective. However, these activities have frequently been relegated to the margins of educational efforts. As ending oppression is not the responsibility of the oppressed, I believe the next question is, how can we overcome barriers to implementing these in formal K-12 classroom settings? If you have any questions about my literature review, please feel free to reach out. And thanks so much for listening.